The doing is the thing. I write this in the book. I don't care what you create. The end thing is not the point. The whole point is the doing, not having done it. This is about what does it actually feel like? What is the process of creating? What does that give you? I don't know. I get so swoony when I think about what it is to make a mark on a page, or like no toddler has ever been handed a crayon and been like, oh, well, I probably can't. I'm just constantly trying to get back to that space. The more I can embody that like inner 3-year-old and just feel whatever it is.
Hi, and welcome. As always, I'm Abbie. This is Stories Lived, Stories Told, and today I invite you to join me in conversation with Caitlin Metz as we take a communication perspective on feeling and making. To take a communication perspective is to consider what we're making and how we're making it through our communication practices. This means we look closely at patterns, context, stories, and relationships, and that we use curiosity, mindfulness, collaboration, and dialogue to create better social worlds. Whether the topic of today's conversation is familiar to you or not, the hope is that using a communication perspective will reveal new ways of seeing and being. At the top of the episode, you heard our conversation partner today, Caitlin Metz. They describe themselves as an accidental author, wayward adjunct faculty, chronic project starter, designer, illustrator, parent, Mary Oliver evangelist, cloud watcher, and big feeler. Caitlin is the co-author of My Body, My Home and the author of Feel Something, Make Something. You can find them on Instagram and on Patreon as well. Following up last week's conversation with Sid, this is the second in our February theme, all about taking a communication perspective on art. Throughout this next month, we will continue to be in conversation with other artists, writers, and creatives to ask, what are we making in our art and why does it matter? So let's begin with Caitlin. Hi, Caitlin.
Hi.
I'm so glad that you are here. Thanks so much for being up, for being a part of this conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for inviting me.
To start, can you introduce yourself? Just, I know to say, who are you is too big of a question. There's too many stories, not enough time. But, knowing the conversation we're going to have today, that we want to talk about your work, the things you're passionate about, what it means to create a soft space for people, feeling and making, maybe that can help give you some direction as to what parts of yourself can you share with us right now so that people know a little bit more about who you are as we go into talking about your work.
Yeah, I would love to. This is a great exercise for me because I'm constantly trying to revise and understand how to talk and say who I am. So it's great. Parent is always like a very number one. I have a 3-year-old and thinking about the world through the lens of what it is to like raise part of the future and to be responsible for a tiny being. It just feels like it's a huge part of my identity in terms of what I'm thinking about and how I'm like ordering my life. I'm Mary Oliver evangelist. I'm a cloud watcher. I'm always watching the sky. These are like the fun, softer parts of me. I identify as a big feeler, and I'm sure we'll get into this more later, but I struggle to sit with my feelings. And so I think that's why I talk about it so much. And I'm building all these practices for me. And then in my like workspace, I refer to myself as a wayward adjunct faculty. So I teach undergrads, but I'm adjunct. So I just float in and out and I kind of do whatever I want and mostly ignore the rules. And I'm a designer and illustrator, which is more of my like, those things pay my bills and also nourish and feed me a lot. And then somehow I'm an accidental author. So created a couple of books and I don't quite know how that happened, but yeah, here we are. So those are some facts about me.
That's good. And we are better for the fact that both of your books are out there in the world. To just jump right in, the language that you use that I love is that your work is about creating a soft space for people. What does that mean to you to create a soft space?
For me, creating a soft space is setting pretense aside, having a shared experience and not pretending to have my shit together when I don't. Yeah, I think one of the ways that I intentionally try and create soft space for people, or that I view my work or presence online, is just like not pretending to be okay when I'm not okay. Everything is curated online. Even the things that I share that are like messy still is curated in a way, but that feels really important to me, that I never just misrepresent what it is to be a human and how I experience that. Just that honesty, and then space for feelings, and just holding the most generous, I don't know, like idea of another person, making as much space as I can for their responses or what they're experiencing, for me to see it in a generous light. I don't know if that makes sense. I think right now I'm in the beginning of the semester, and I have new freshmen who are trying to understand who this weirdo is, who's like,
Yeah.
deadlines are largely arbitrary. And, but like, does it feel like enough? And they're like, how many sketches? And I'm like, did you get to the point where you feel like you have a new understanding? And they're like, I don't understand. Was that 5 or 10? And I'm like, yes, I don't know. But I'm having so many conversations with them where I'm just like, I really care about the process of what you're learning and how you're showing up and experiencing. And I care way less about like, did you get here like right on the dot, or did you turn something in on time? I've already had them. We're in this like second or third week of school, like frantically asking for like a half a day extension. And I'm like, bro, get it to me this week. I don't, it's just like, yeah, for me, that is like just acknowledging the whole, ooh, okay, maybe this is the best answer. I feel like I'm talking my way to understanding it right now. But just viewing a person as a whole being, and not just the one part that we're seeing. Like you right now are interviewing me, but like you have, I'm sure, so many other things happening around you. And so if like something weird happened, just to like hold the most generous idea of like what that would be. Yeah. So I think a lot about that in terms of parenting and teaching, is just to always, in the spirit of Dr. Becky, if anyone is a parent and on social media probably knows her, but like the kids are good inside, that like everyone, her whole thing is like inherently there's good inside of you. And so anything that's showing up that wouldn't, fall into the category of quote unquote good is really about an unmet need, or like some kind of resource. And that's what holding a soft space to me means. And so the way that I'm doing that is just constantly acknowledging all of the feelings and the humanity within each of us. Did that make any sense?
You made so much sense. The only problem is that I'm overwhelmed because I have 10 different things I want to say. And I know that once I start saying one of them, I'm going to forget the others, but I want to come back to them. But I'll just pick one and go with it. I also identify as a big feeler. So I don't know. I guess the way I'll say it is I think I'm really good at maybe intellectualizing my emotions, and I love to talk about them. Big verbal processor for sure. So I'm all about talking myself to, the end point, or kind of figuring out what I mean as I'm talking. But my recent kind of practice has been in letting myself actually feel my feelings rather than just intellectualizing my feelings. And that's important to me because I think of myself as like, I really value vulnerability and authenticity. But there's, no end goal of that. I guess I'm still on the ongoing journey of trying to attempt to maybe a little bit feel the things I actually feel, and, like see them as information and learn from them, which I know is a big part of your work. I can also picture freshman year Abbie. If I was sitting in your class, I'd be one of the students going, what is happening right now? I want structure. I want whatever. And so it's interesting to think about how sometimes providing a soft space for people, if they've never had a soft space before, feels like uncomfortable and almost like, I don't want that, but we need that. We need a soft space. But when it's foreign to us, we might, I can empathize with maybe your students that feel taken aback or a little apprehensive about the soft space you're creating for them.
Yeah, that is such a great point. I think I'm rather unsettling, and not everyone's cup of tea. I think that I sometimes refer to myself just as like, not stinky cheese, but just a particular brand of wine. Oh, this is like a tangent. I love that about myself because people tend to self-select away from me, and that's great. I'm so happy for you to find someone else who will be better for you. But it requires a lot of them, because I'm just like, in a very honest way, like I am tired And it does not bring me any joy to keep a strict tally of your attendance, or like, I'm not going to take half points off if you're like 20 minutes late. Like it's a 3-hour studio class.
Mm-hmm.
I'm largely uninterested. I'm very interested in like your growth and progression and how you interact with the class, how you speak about yourself, how you speak to others, how we engage. It requires a lot of ownership and accountability on their part to work with. Like the framework that I set up does ask a ton of them.
Yeah.
And yeah, we talk a lot about what it is for them to be in control of their education and how I'm not here to like force them. Like I'm going to get paid the same whether or not they show up and do the work. Like whatever, like I'm not going to spend my time hounding you, but like if you reach out, like I'm here all day, like whatever you need, but I'm not going to go bananas or like if docking points is the thing that's going to inspire you to do better, this class is going to be terrible for you.
Well, here's what I'm thinking about is that it is a bummer that some of these kind of ways of being in the world that you're talking about, this kind of creating a safe space, allowing yourself to, find a softness, are not the norm. Again, my perspective is a communication perspective. That's what I studied in school. And I can so vividly still picture myself sitting in my intro to interpersonal relationships class going, this is the class that everyone needs to take. Finance 101, sure. Public speaking, whatever. Intro to interpersonal relationships. If nothing, if you're not going to be a comm major, everyone should be taking this class. And, you grow up and you're in school and it's math and science and English, literature, whatever, gym, music, great things. But, why are we not talking about communication skills in some of these concepts, themes, theories that, again, are the like softer things maybe that are just not valued or not taught? One of the things that's a big part of my communication perspective is to think about the stories that we're told. And so I think that the stories that you're telling in your work are asking people to buy into a new kind of story, which demands some, kind of deconstructing of the old stories we've internalized, which are so powerful. And it's important work. And like you said, even though it's a soft space, that's not to say it's easy work.
No, not easy work. And I pretty carefully, like in my work, like my classroom, my like academic space, like I definitely bring myself into that, but it definitely has its own container. But like I just led a 5-week course about starting where you are. And, it's like a very tender, emotionally like lovely space, but I'm really careful to not really use the language safe space.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty like this is going to be hard. This is going to be challenging. Like it could be activating for you. Like I don't work to create spaces that are like free of any kind of activation or even triggers. I don't know. It's a delicate thing. Like I'm here to like feel the stuff and like dig in. And yeah, I think the soft skills, I keep using like quotes for everything, but these like softer skills are like the hardest and most important and the most like activating.
Yes.
Yeah. And we're not learning this in school. Like no one's teaching you how to human. Like where is the class on emotional regulation? Like why are teenagers not learning polyvagal theory? Like why? It's wild to me. Just so wild. And then the people who do learn this stuff are the ones who have had like major mental health crisis, right? Or and then we're like we're like, okay, I have to learn this for my survival. Like I didn't just I'm not out here seeking out this knowledge around mental health for fun. Like I didn't come to this just because it was like I was curious, right? Like this has been deeply self-preservational and now I am deeply curious and I'm like very driven to understand these things. I didn't come to it by way of ease or like for fun. I just I think that things could have been a lot easier for me and just for the world at large if we were learning this, from like elementary school and, up. Why isn't this the like core curriculum? Way more important than geometry, in my opinion.
I'm so glad that you brought up the self-preservationist because that was language that was sticking out from me from your recent book, because I think that is maybe what I was trying to say a second ago in a more succinct way, that the old story around the soft things, the emotions, the feelings, and creating, making, is that is like self-indulgent. And that's like, I don't know if we're talking about like that hierarchy of needs. That's at the top. It's a privilege to do that. You get to do it if you have enough time and resources, but you got to do all these other things first. If you're calling it self-preservationist, and I think it is, I think it's at the bottom of the pyramid. I think that is something we should be doing first, and should be, like you're saying, teaching and valuing and cultivating for people, along with all the other life skills that we get taught. Mm-hmm. So I think that's part of that distinction of how it's the story that's been told. The new story that I hope that people can embrace is to see this work not as, a luxury, but as a necessity, because our mental well-being, our, connection to our body, our ability to create are all valuable and integral things to our well-being.
I feel so much hope when I look at Gen Z. And I have a friend that when we like feel really down, we both will text each other, like all caps, Gen Z. And I feel like maybe that's not something that people say often, but what I'm seeing from them in their I'm seeing an emotional literacy within this generation that definitely was not there when I was a teenager. Like, I'm watching my niece and nephew are 18, 20, and I'm just like, whoa, if I had known this stuff when I was your age, and like my parents, it makes me really hopeful about like what's coming up. And I see millennial parents, like a lot of the people that I am putting into my inner circle of parenting, like we're just doing it in such a different way. And I'm like, oh, wow, okay. It's one thing that really gives me hope. Like the world can feel so bleak, but watching this like younger generation come up in this time where I think there is so much more access, even if it's not really being taught in school. And for all of the like pitfalls of social media, I feel like there is a lot that has been accessible to them that I like never had access to. So that makes me feel just so hopeful. And even in the last like 7 or 10 years of teaching, the students that are coming in now just have a higher level of understanding about things. And I think some of it was pandemic related, like even in the last few years, which was a bit so hard for them. And also I'm just seeing that they've had to seek out like more care and resources. So while it's been really challenging, I'm seeing an increased level of just understanding of themselves as a whole body and entity. And it is a little less hard for me when I'm like, where's your water bottle? Like, this is a 3-hour class. Like, where are your snacks? Like, you stopped and stretched. Whereas like maybe like 5-6 years ago, like the kind of stares I was getting, they have reduced, I feel like, a little bit.
Yeah, I love that. You're making me think of this space that I find myself in a lot. Again, I love the communication. I love the language. And that's so important. I think it's empowering to give people language. The power to name things is amazing on its own. And also that kind of second step being, how do you turn it into some kind of action or a practice? And I see that as being a parallel to your feel something, make something language, in that feel it, name it, and then, kind of do something about it, create about it. And you use this language of collaborating with your emotions. What does that mean? What does it look like for you to collaborate with your emotions?
First and foremost, it's building a relationship with them. The thing that's been most influential for me, and I write about it a tiny bit in the book, but I was still so new to it when I was writing the book, I felt scared to write authoritatively on it. But
well, what would you say now then?
Yeah, IFS, internal family systems.
Yeah.
The most transformative mode of therapy for me. And it basically, look it up, don't take my word for it, but it's that you have all of these different parts. Like there's this family, this community of thoughts, ideas, selves, ages, could be different genders within you. And all of their goal is to protect you, keep you alive. Like they're just there to keep you alive. But some of those ways are like pretty maladaptive, or they've carried over from a time where like what was necessary for you to survive is now like causing you harm. And the whole thing for the biggest thing for me with using this and getting to know my parts is being able to have like an open dialogue with them. And it stops feeling like so shameful and more of being like, oh, wow, okay, I see this part of myself that is still stuck. Like this part still thinks they're 7, or like this part is really stuck reliving a certain trauma and is just trying to protect and protect and protect me. So that's one half of it. It's just getting to know the parts of myself and being in relationship with them. But making work in collaboration is like really sitting in that, like letting that 7-year-old me create something. So like tapping into that self and creating from that space. Yeah. Like the best, like my work all like it feels like I'm collaborating with something else. Often it's like there's me, 35, Caitlin, who is in this body and self and time. And I am creating in relationship with any of the number of ages or places or times that I've ever been. And that is so powerful for me to work through things, just to express it in a less like maybe heady way. And thinking of collaborating is just like, if I'm feeling angry, like just to create from that anger.
Yeah.
And I talk about these different modes of creation in the book. And I talk about creation as ritual, as a conversation, as documentation or expression or disruption. And one of the ways that I collaborate with my feelings is like letting them express themselves. So like, okay, you're angry. Let's get a crayon and like just fucking tear this page apart.
Yeah.
Or like, are you sad? What is the saddest thing that I can draw? Instead of being like, oh, I have to transform it, just be like, get it out. Like, let it live on the page, make some space between me and it. So then I can be in a greater dialogue with it. Like the more I can identify and name the feeling, the less merged I am with it, the more that I can see it and then have that relationship and connection to it. And art making is the mode for me. That's like one of the best ways for me to make space between me and my feeling. And that's not like it seems counterintuitive because like the space between me and the feeling often requires me just like sitting deeply in it and being with it. But like the less that I fight it, the more space that can come between me and the feeling.
I'm hearing you, when you talk about a space, maybe having like perspective, a little bit of a different perspective, at least. Some of my feelings, again, big feeler over here. Some of my feelings feel so big that it feels like they're controlling me. And I don't necessarily want to say the reverse that. It's not that I want to control my feelings, but I'd like to not feel so out of control in my feelings. So I think for me, when I can create that space and kind of look at it as its own thing to say, okay, well, I am not this feeling. It is its own thing. It makes sense to me, the language you're using to talk about getting space and then collaborating with your emotion as, kind of its own entity. And
Well, it's like to not be controlled by your feeling is to like, I am angry. I see this anger. This is so valid and real. I'm also not going to take an action based in anger, right? Like my actions could be informed by it. The anger is giving me some like really big information. I know some stuff. And so to like really look at it and sit with it, be with that anger means that then you can like calmly and rationally choose your next step or take an action. But that's so hard.
So hard.
It is. Yeah. I talk a big game. And I'm just like, oh, and I collaborate with my feelings. And then I am just like, that is the thing that I'm working towards constantly. Yeah. And that's like big picture, like, I have self-actualized, which I don't think is really a thing.
Yeah. Not to be cliche and go, the journey is the destination. But yeah, when I'm like, oh, I'm doing this, I'm like, I'm trying to do that.
Yeah. No, the process is the work.
Yeah.
Yeah. The doing is the thing. I write this in the book. There's like, I have a letter at the very end and I'm just like, it doesn't matter. I don't care what you create. The end thing is not the point. The point of this is the process of letting it out and making that space. It is like the whole point is the doing, not having done it. And so what it looks like, this isn't a book to like make you a great artist or like, this isn't a skill. I'm not teaching you how to watercolor. or like perfect something, which is great. And I love those books, but this is about what does it actually feel like? What is the process of creating? What does that give you?
Yeah.
And when I'm creating in my most emotive state, like I'm scribbling. These are tiny, like like this is not beautifully rendered photographic-esque paintings, right? This is guttural. It's innate. It is, yeah, I don't know. I get so swoony when I think about what it is to make a mark on a page, or that's my preferred mode is like drawing, but anyone can do that. Like no toddler has ever been handed a crayon and been like, oh, well, I probably can't. They're just like, what? My arm wants to move this way across the page. It's so gestural.
That's awesome. Yeah.
I'm just constantly trying to get back to that space. The more I can embody that like inner 3-year-old and just feel whatever it is.
What else is it? Can you expand? Like, what else is it, or what else does it mean to you to make marks on a page?
The original illustration that I drew for the book was this image of me in this like tangle. Like my head was just this big tangle. And I often refer to my brain as like noodles, the spaghetti. It feels like all of my thoughts have like tied together. And then the next frame is me kind of like there's a string from my brain coming down to a pin. And I'm like drawing it out, like literally drawing it out of my head onto the paper. And then it's on the page. And then I hang the page on the wall and I stand back and I look at it. And that is, no matter what the mark is that I've made on the page, it has released at least a little bit of the tension from what is inside of me. And yeah, it's like sacred, it's ritual, it's documentational, it's every single thing. And watching people make marks or lines, any kind of mark on a paper, I just see this like, oh, you're like something is flowing through and out you. And other people who like prefer different mediums probably feel a similar way, but to a different medium.
One of the questions that I'm always asking, again, this communication perspective, is about meaning making in a big way. That was the most revolutionary thing for me when I came across the theory of CMM, which is coordinated management of meaning. And it's, this communication theory, but also there's kind of all these great tools and language that really lend itself to being a real like practice. So when you talk about ritual, that's kind of what I think about. But one of the key parts of it is, again, that we actually are the makers of meaning. There's really no meaning that is innate. And so I see that as empowering and exciting, that I'm not beholden to the meaning that other people have made, or, meanings that I find myself wanting to make that actually really don't serve me or don't feel as true to me. And so that's, why I want to keep asking, what does it mean? What does it mean? What does it mean? And again, no right or wrong answer, but what does it mean to you is different than what it means to someone else. I'm not saying that your word is the end all be all on what it means to create. So many people have so many different experiences, but I do think it's so beautiful to think about what is the meaning we're making. And I think, you're making plenty of meaning in the work that you do that matters for people.
I love thinking about that where you said like no meaning is innate, like we're creating it. I'm having a lot of thoughts. I think about this a lot as like your body is this filter and everything that you're bringing in comes through you. It's like filtering through you. And the quality of your filter is kind of based on like your beliefs or values or like what you're holding for yourself. So like how wide is the mesh, or like what kind of funnel is it? And then so like everything comes into your body, you like take it through this filter and then like project it back out. And that projection becomes your worldview. And then that your world, like you start taking things in through your worldview. So if you want to see the world differently, you have to change your filter so that then you project back. And it's just this endless loop. The way that I think about this and my care of myself and my view and what I'm bringing in is like always, I think a lot about the word integrity as meaning that your beliefs and actions are in line. So not that there is one like integrity, but for me to be in integrity means that I'm living out the thing that I think is right. And so anytime I'm out of alignment, I either need to change my actions or I need to change my belief system. But always evaluating that And like tuning it up means that then I'm shifting what I'm projecting back out.
Yeah.
It sounds like a riddle when I work it out. That's something that I've just been like mulling over and trying to understand. But yeah, the thing that you said about us all making meaning and the stories that we're telling ourselves, I think a lot about Brene Brown asking like, what is the story you're telling yourself about this? And then Hannah Gatsby
Mm-hmm.
and her stand up within the net where she's like, we learn from the stories that we focus on. And if she's wanting to rewrite this trauma for herself, like, tell the story differently. She has to and that's like seeing it from a different point of view or like of yourself who might have experienced this moment differently.
Yeah, that's a perfect example of, the meaning making and you getting to choose. And for me, my version of kind of what you're saying, you talked about hope earlier, and Gen Z. And, we could talk about like, what does doing this kind of work? What does, feeling something and creating mean? Like, how does that move us toward what I'd call like a better social world? I think that's such an important question to be asking. And the way I use it to find myself in alignment or to be what I would call like embodied is to ask myself, what is the better social world that we're working towards? And then how would I act right now if I actually believed that I could, move us toward that? And mainly, I think about that through communication. What would I say? What stories would I tell? How would I show up to people? What kind of space would I create for others to allow them to be their authentic selves in the hope that, they can reciprocate that. And I can also feel comfortable to be my authentic self. And, all of that being the snowball towards the better social world, which I think, many different people would define better social world in different ways. But to me, that kind of, emotional intelligence, and then also having the tools to express your emotions, to make something out of them, to give yourself that space, that distance from them is also absolutely a part of the better social world. As many people as possible that can develop those skills, I think we'd have a better world for it.
Yeah, if we could just at minimum acknowledge that like how we're acting and living out is always a response to something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if we could just pause and be like, oh, why this thing's really upsetting to me. And instead of being like, oh, that means this thing is bad, be like, why am I upset? Like, just all like take at least one step back from our experience or our belief system, or if something feels scary to you. And you immediately are like, well, that's bad. Let's ban it. And be like, okay, what if we sit with it for a second? What if we ask a question? What if we could just sit with discomfort of difference or not knowing?
Mm-hmm.
And so if we want if that is what I believe that our social world is, how do I do that right here? I was actually having a conversation with Rebecca Tossig, sitting pretty on Instagram, and we were talking kind of about this overwhelm that we're feeling with the world. And she said something so profound when she was like, we have like so much power, like we have this much power, like I drew this big oval to impact like our immediate life, like our little families, this thing. And we have like this much power. And I drew like this grain of sand, like, or like piece of rice to impact the world. And so why am I over here like spinning my wheels, trying to put all of my energy into this tiny thing? And what would it look like if the majority of my energy went to like sweeping where I'm standing, to like really sending my community, and then also putting that grain of sand, like with everyone is like putting their little grain of sand or their little rice. That makes a huge change, but it's so ineffectual for me, especially as like an introvert, a neurospicy like I have pretty limited things to offer, and the things that I do give are like quieter and from a smaller space. So why am I extending so much energy towards something that's like not even making that big of a difference? That was not very eloquent. I haven't worked this idea all the way out. She said it way better. But what I'm thinking of is these like shapes, this like really big oval. And it's like, I have power to impact my world, and it's a lot. And I have a little power to change the bigger thing. So like my energy to them should be proportionate. It's not at all to like reduce my responsibility to like larger civic community things, but yeah, I can't necessarily I can't change. I have it in my head that I can like change what's happening across the world.
Yeah.
And I feel better if I'm just constantly in a panic about it because I kind of feels like I'm doing something.
Right.
Yeah, but maybe the thing that I have the most power over right now is like raising a really kind, thoughtful, emotionally intelligent human.
Mm-hmm.
Or like getting to know my neighbors or like taking soup to a friend who's sick or, like those are the things that are really in my power.
Yep.
I don't know. Or maybe that's just making myself feel better.
No, I think there's truth to that. And you're reminding me of another conversation I've had for the podcast. And I kind of brought up this better social world language and said, what's your idea of a better social world? And this person kind of helped me to put it in a different perspective, even though I've been like using that language for so long. The way I was kind of asking the question is, this far off thing, what do you see? What do you hope it is? And they were like, well, what if the better social world's right now? So when I'm saying, how are we creating better social worlds? What do we want for our social world? That's not, part of the conversation could be in 100 years from now, I really hope there's, still glaciers and, the world hasn't all burned up. That's a great, better social world. I hope people are kinder to the planet, whatever, but also people could be kinder to the planet right this very second. And the better social world could be made in the instant of how I show up to you.
Mm-hmm.
Like that is the better social world. That's my grain of rice doing my little bit. And I think that, and yeah, maybe this is just me wanting to make myself feel better, but I like to think that, the way I show up to you, then in turn you show up to someone else. I think if we just keep offering people the space to be their authentic selves and offering people a soft landing place, offering them the tools, the language for that emotional intelligence or emotional awareness, at least, or collaboration, then I have to believe that that's got its own kind of ripple effect. The other thing I want to return to that you're talking about is, you didn't say it, but patterns, basically. And if you can zoom out, then it's so valuable to be able to see those patterns. And that's something to talk about in reference to communication too, of like, you could look at a conversation, you could look at a whole relationship, and say, okay, well, what happened there? What went wrong or what went right? What are the turns that we each took that shaped the conversation? So when I think about, your feel something, make something, that's great. And that has its own relationship. But then, how do you zoom out even on that? Those are just two turns of a much larger pattern. And I see the pattern that, at least, I can speak for the United States, mostly our society, is this pattern of be really busy and produce a lot of stuff and consume a lot of stuff. And it's hard things, not soft things so much. And so, you coming in with your work, or the kind of the people you've referenced, like Brene Brown, I know you talk about Mary Oliver. I love Glennon Doyle, her podcast, We Can Do Hard Things. I think so important. Those things feel like they kind of cut off the pattern and take us in a new direction, act as a new turn to start a new pattern. Like, what could a pattern of loving kindness and authenticity mean for the world, for our own social worlds, whatever, however you want to understand it.
I love, you said, like, interrupting the pattern. And I think it's circling all the way back to the beginning of the conversation where, and I don't even know how I started talking about, but I'm interrupting my students' pattern.
Yes.
Like, they don't understand, like, they cannot come into my class on autopilot because nothing that I'm doing is quite operating. Not that I'm like so revolutionary, but like I'm just like shaking it up a little bit. And I think it can feel really small, but it's like 1 degree, like right now it doesn't look like much, but in like a few years or a few miles, if you think about like how a ship is turning, or I don't know, I should not use analogies of things I don't fully understand, but like,
I don't know anything about ships.
A little bit now.
Yes.
Like down the road is like going to make a wider angle. Like it's just a bigger turn later. I'm always trying to zoom in and out and see like, okay, right now, like this is all that matters. This is like such a moment, but then zoom out and be like, it's also not that deep. It's not that, like there's time and there's space. And also like, this is so precious and important and like right now,
Yeah.
which is derailing from the pattern part, but it's like disruptive, it's interrupting. And that also I think is what I mean by creating this soft space is like, it is an interruption. It's a pocket. It's a nudge. All things are not normal. We're not just like operating. We can't autopilot through our feelings. If we can't just like keep pushing aside, you have to pause, you have to stop, you have to feel a thing. And that's for me, the interruption of the pattern.
Yeah. I really like the idea of being intentional or doing things, with purpose, which are different, but related, purposeful, and being intentional, and impossible to do all the time. That takes so much energy. But that's kind of what I'm hearing you saying when you're saying, I'm asking these students to turn off autopilot. You have to, have some intention. It means that the things you're doing are at least a little bit on purpose, which is not the case. Maybe if you're on autopilot, I would say, being on autopilot is repeating some of these, what I'd call like unwanted repetitive patterns. You didn't actually intend to make those. If you zoom out and you look at your social and you go, whoa, how'd I get here? Probably some unwanted repetitive patterns that you contributed to because maybe you were on autopilot, because you weren't being mindful about the way you were showing up. You weren't being intentional about, the stories that you were passing on to other people or telling yourself and how that was shaping you. So yeah, I see that as being like requiring an intentionality of us. And maybe that's what we mean when we say creating or showing up or being present to softness or a soft space is actually not easy because it asks presence and intentionality of us. So on the whole, zoom out, big social world picture, what I see is an unwanted repetitive pattern of hardness, hard things, and we want to interrupt it. I won't speak for everyone. I think there's value in interrupting that with some softness.
Oh, I have two thoughts. The first one is a little different than what direction you went, but I was thinking of it while you're talking. The intentionality and purpose feels like non-assumption, like to interrupt or to shift things, you have to stop assuming, and you have to like go, why? Okay, when you have that question, okay, why is that thing true? Why is this thing true? And I have a phrase that I use, which is queerness as non-assumption. And I love the word queer, something I like hold as an identity, but in so much of my world, not just in terms of like gender or sexuality, but in parenting, and like not just being like, oh, this is how it's always been done, but in this moment, why and what actually is best for us and our family. What does a family unit look like? What kind of supports do we need? Who is flowing in and out of our house? Like, to not just assume it's like two parents and a child and like the job, like it doesn't work. And if you don't pause and be like, why? And what was the purpose? Like, what's underneath it? Like, why do I even want this thing? We've been talking about this in the 5-week course I've been running, where we're just like digging underneath and be like, okay, there's an example I use, or it's like, I want a porch. And then immediately I was met with like, oh, here are all the reasons that you can't, like zoning, and we have to get a permit, and we need to build like a retaining wall, and all this stuff. And it was so defeating. And so it was just like, shut it down. I was like, great, no porch. So I was like, okay, why do I want a porch? Okay, it's like aesthetic, it's cute, I want it on the front of the house. Oh, I really want to hang out in the front of my home instead of just the back, because I want to get to know my neighbors. And so, I could throw a blanket out and we could start playing in the front yard. Or like I could plant some flowers, which is cheap and also is contributing to it looking nice. And so being able to get underneath, and that's why I'm kind of going in another direction, but that's getting to the core desire, and I can just have the thing that I wanted. Like, I still like a porch. That's probably like 5 years away, like financially, logistically, like, but I can play in my front yard and I can make the front of my house beautiful. Or I could just be miserable that I can't have a porch. So it's like trickster, like refusal, like this stubborn gladness. And that is what's I think that's really interruptive and is countercultural, because it's like, oh, you need like the money to have the shiny thing because that's what the thing is, instead of like going underneath it and being like, why do I want whatever the thing is? Okay, what's the core desire? What are all the other ways that I could fulfill this desire for myself that probably don't include spending a bunch of money or like
Yeah.
contributing to, I don't know, a cultural norm.
You're saying it's unrelated. I think it's totally related. I think that's at the center of so much of what we've probably been talking about is what's the thing under the thing. And that, yes, we could talk about the rituals or the practice of making things and creating and putting pen to paper, or, whatever form it takes. But the practice under that practice, I think, is finding the thing under the thing, asking why of yourself, just being curious. Curiosity, I think, is so important and not something we afford ourselves or others enough. And I haven't said this before, but it just came to me that I would say probably a very central to miscommunications or moments of, just people missing each other is probably really just as simple as a lack of curiosity. Because you say this thing and then I say this thing and we're like, oh, okay, nowhere to go from there. I guess we won't talk anymore.
You know what the other person needs.
You're right. It is assumptions. But if you can be curious, and I guess, that's a little bit of like a humble yourself to assume that you don't know what someone means. Ask them what they mean. That's like, I say that all the time to people that I'm like, my dad sometimes will be like, well, I don't know how to kind of communicate this to your brother. And I'm like, well, instead of you assuming that it means the same to him, you could tell him what it means to you and ask him what it means to him. And then you don't have to wonder anymore. And then to circle back to something you said earlier too, once two people or whoever, once you've shared what something means to you, if those meanings are different, that's also not the end. That's what being in dialogue, like the literal definition of being in dialogue with people is to, hold this tension between being, I would say, like profoundly open to other people, their stories, their experiences, their ways of making meaning, while also holding your own ground in a way and recognizing, which is hard to do, but soft to feel, that all those stories can coexist. And all it takes is curiosity, maybe a little creativity, imagination. Those are the keys, I would say.
The thing about like multiple people's stories being true has completely changed the way that I've been able to hold and forgive others and forgive myself for things that have happened in the past, and to be like, okay, this is what it was to me. And I don't need it to mean the same thing to you. Like, this is what I did and why, and this is what it meant. And I get that it meant something else to you, and being able to hold both of those and speak about them, and not as a way to justify or make one right or true. There's so many things that are true at one time, and the ability to see the range of things that are true at once. It's so freeing.
Yeah.
Humbling. It's really hard too when you're like pissed off or like something's going wrong, to be like, this is what is true for me.
Yeah.
This is what I'm meaning. This is what I am experiencing. What are you experiencing? These are different things. There's a third thing that's like the thing that we're experiencing together. Our couples therapist, when we were first starting, she was like, I'm not either of your therapist. So I'm not like on either of your sides. I'm here for the entity, the thing that is between you.
Yes.
That's what I am working towards. And it was really helpful to like reframe it as like, this isn't about me. It's not about my partner. It's about, what is this thing that we're creating? What is the energy between us? And that's like a third truth. There's like the thing that's true for me, the thing that's true for him, and the thing that both of our truths make.
Wow. Yeah.
And that is just like, it's really hard to like hate or like retain like anger or resentment towards someone once you're able to just acknowledge, like, there's people like I'm never going to re-engage in relationship with, but I have been able to be like, I understand. I see why that made sense for you, or like where that could have become. And that is really healing.
Yeah. As we are wrapping up, is there anything else you want to say? Anything else you want to share that feels like core to the work you do?
I'm currently in a state where I'm really trying to understand what the core is. Like, we have so many different aspects. I'm like, I teach in an academic setting. I teach in this like very woo feeling place that's like candlelit. And I like run online courses. I run this project called Saturday Morning Carton with my partner, where he bakes muffins, I draw a newspaper and we deliver them to people on Saturday mornings as this little encapsulated ritual. I have a Patreon where I'm like uploading zines and things. I'm also a printmaker who's not making mini prints, but I have like 2 big presses sitting behind me right now. I'm like in all of these spaces and I'm trying to be like, okay, what is the core? What is the essence of these things? And how do I like disseminate the work appropriately? But stuff I'm always coming back to, no matter what space I'm in, is like ritual, pausing, care, self-keeping, like tending to oneself, the responsibility that we have to care for ourselves, and how that responsibility encapsulates asking for help and like reaching out. That doesn't make you an island. Everything that I do just comes back to this, like, how are we caring for ourselves and for each other? And how do we make the world just like a little softer, a little, I don't know, how do we just like survive this with a little more joy or presence? And I'm still trying to, I don't know how to untangle all of the places. Sometimes I fantasize about just like duplicating myself and being like, okay, this person can just go sit in like liberatory educational research, and this person can go over here and just like really understand queer theory. And I have all of these different academics within me that want to go in. And then another person who just wants to like sit and read Mary Oliver under a tree for the rest of my life, or start a school for like little children that is just like free and expansive. And I know that there's something sparkling between all of them, and that is the essence. And so I'm really sitting with what that is. And if I can I like give homework? Can I give a prompt?
Please.
So a thing that I often prompt and I'm working on for myself is writing down like all of these parts, like what are all of the selves or the things. This kind of comes back to parts work. But for me in this moment, it looks like all of the different work that I'm doing, and write those down. I like to do it like in a circle, like write them all around a circle, and then make lists of all the things that are true about each one, and then start connecting. Like, what is the constellation? What is that? What is in there? And I am trying to tease that out right now. But if anyone is like curious at all about the expanse, just like write down all of the things that could possibly be true about you, especially, and maybe like most importantly, you at like 5, or like, you know, like
all the yous. Yeah. What's been true for all the yous.
All of the yous. And like, what is in the essence or the core of that? And then I don't know. I'll let you know.
If our next turn is to keep asking why of everything, I think that's a great make, homework of ask why and write it all down and connect it all together and zoom out and give yourself perspective. And yeah, again, so important for ritual, for our own well-being, for all of it. I think I could talk to you for hours more.
I know. I really like the way that your brain works. This is a delight. Like, truly, I could just keep going.
Well, maybe we need a part 2, because there's so much more to say. When I recorded with Rebecca, I like had her for so long, and then I was like, do you have time? Can we keep going? Like, I ended up having like 3 parts to our conversation, because I was like, I can't stop talking to this woman.
She is the best conversationalist and asks like such incredible questions. I just watch her like pull the essence of her out when she responds. Yeah. It's so earnest and true for that moment. I'm like, you're really just pulling out what is the most true thing right now. That's how I feel when I talk to her. Yeah, I could just sit at her feet and listen. I just want to listen to her questions.
Yes. Yeah, and hers is one of my favorite stories. And you're a part of this story now too, in that I like moved back home for a while after I graduated college, and I was like, I want to read more. I have no money. I'll go to the library, which I haven't been to in a decade probably. And I went and I was looking for this specific book, and it wasn't there. And I was on my way out, and then her book was right there. And I was just like, I'll read this. I, glanced at it, and I don't know, good on her. The cover was enticing to me. Yeah. And I read it and I thought, this is awesome. And so, I looked her up and I emailed her. I said, do you want to be on my podcast? She said, absolutely. And then she was on my podcast, and now I like consider her a friend and just am in love with everything she does. And then she connected me to you. So you're a part of, all of these turns. And I hope that, both of those conversations and the relationships are, again, part of our better social world, at least. And so, yeah, I'm glad to know her, glad to know you, glad to know your work. I'll share one little story too. Like, I was spending more time with your book yesterday, and it's kind of speaking the language of my body is something that I'm working on and it's new to me. And I went to see a movie last night, and I've never been more in tune with, like, the person next to me was drinking wine because it was like funky little movie theater and they have wine. And I was like, it was like red wine. The smell was like so strong. Like, I just get whiffs of it when he'd pick his cup up. And I was like so tuned into that when it would happen. I'd like get whiffs of popcorn. Like, I was just so aware of like my physical sensations, the smells. And I feel like I wouldn't have experienced it that way if I hadn't spent the morning before that, with your book and really hearing your language and your prompting to, be in this physical space and feel and notice in that way.
It's like the nicest thing anyone could say.
Well, it's true, and it mattered, and it'll stick with me.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that.
Thanks, Caitlin. Thanks so much for your time and for your energy and for all the awesome stuff you do and sharing it with me today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks again for having me. This was a delight.
Okay, that is all for our conversation with Caitlin. I'll include all the links to all the ways you can connect with Caitlin and their awesome work in the show notes. At the end of each episode, I like to offer some questions to reflect on. This acts as a next turn for us so that the conversation doesn't stop when the episode does. Today, the questions I would have you think about are: where can you find, or better yet, create a soft space for yourself? And what can you learn when you stop making assumptions and start asking why? Obviously, these questions are inspired by our conversation with Caitlin today, and they're ones that I'll be continuing to think about, and I hope that you'll spend some time reflecting on them as well. You can find these questions at the top of the show notes, and I invite you to reach out to me if you want to share your reflections to these questions, as well as any of your own questions or ideas. You can reach me through email, the website, or by commenting on Instagram and YouTube. Another great way to keep a dialogue alive is to invite more people in your own life into this conversation. So please share this episode or another episode that's been meaningful for you. As always, I'm supported by the CMM Institute for Personal and Social Evolution. This podcast is just one of many initiatives designed to create a soft space for more conversations that move us toward those better social worlds we hope to create. You can learn more about the CMM Institute and all of their other initiatives at the links in the show notes. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for being curious, and thank you for being a part of this story. I'm Abbie, and this has been Stories Lived, Stories Told.